Hey everybody, welcome to CAF Warbird Tube, the show where we talk about World War II, aviation, history, and so much more. Warbird Tube is produced by the Commemorative Air Force, the world's largest flying museum. Our mission is to educate, inspire, and honor through flight and living history experiences. The CAF began the Warbird movement more than 65 years ago, and thanks to the support of individuals like you, we continue to grow strong. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and now our host, Steve Buss. Thanks for watching and keep 'em flying.
Good evening, aviation enthusiasts. Welcome to CAF Warbird Tube for this evening. Tonight on episode number 161, we're going to take a look behind the Masters of the Air cameras with Taigh Ramey. Now, whether you're joining us for the first time or you're a loyal Warbird Tube fan, we're very happy to have you with us tonight. If you enjoy our content, don't forget to spread the word on your favorite social media platforms. Warbird Tube is made possible by the Commemorative Air Force. To find out more about CAF, our events, our aircraft, local units, or how you can join in the fun, just visit our website, commemorativeairforce.org. Masters of the Air. It was a television series that's been highly anticipated for a number of years. It came out in January on AppleTV. It has met with lots of critical acclaim and maybe some criticism. We'll put that aside for now, but if you haven't seen it, where have you been? But just in case you haven't, here's the trailer for Masters of the Air.
What's the move? We lead our boys through it.
So you're happy?
A girl worth riding to is hard to find.
Not if you know where to look.
I'll miss you every second.
Major Egan, you were the first pilot assigned to the 100th.
Me and Buck Levin.
You are in charge of 35 planes and 350 air crewmen.
Don't you die on me before I get over there. Something big is brewing.
The 8th will be sending up the largest air armada ever assembled in the history of mankind.
Straight into Hitler's territory.
We need complete and total air superiority. That's the mission.
What?
You might be the last pretty face I ever see.
What's the move? We lead our boys through it.
All that we do, day in, day out, does something to a guy, doesn't it?
We're here to fight the monsters. The things these people are capable of. And they got it coming. Trust me.
Lord, guard and guide the men who fly through the great spaces of the sky.
Are we Tuskegee men or what? Sir, yes, sir!
Be with them traversing the air in darkening storms or sunshine fair.
I think we may be done. We are gonna sit here and take it. We're gonna stick with our mission as long as we can fly.
We won't go without a fight.
Joining me now is Taigh Ramey, obviously from a hangar in California, where you have set up camp. And Taigh, great to have you with us tonight.
Thanks. It's an honor to be here.
Tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you get involved in aviation?
Pretty much started from my parents, who were World War II vets. My mom was an Army nurse, and my dad was a B-29 navigator. So, built models as a kid with my dad, and always had an interest in the World War II stuff. And it started with going to a flea market and found an aircraft instrument, and my dad got me a Norden bomb sight disassembled from a garage sale, and he would always get World War II stuff from garage sailing, and I just the interest just grew and grew. So it goes back to childhood.
Yeah. What kind of aircraft do you normally fly?
Mostly we fly Beech 18s, Jan, my girlfriend, has a couple of L5s, and we bought a Cessna 195 together. For the museum, we have a PV-2D Harpoon long-range Navy patrol bomber that we fly to shows and things like that. So pretty much anything. I used to fly with the Collings Foundation on tour, so flew B-25s, B-24, typed in those in the DC-3 and the PV-2, and flew the B-17 as well a little bit.
Good. Well, you mentioned the museum. Tell us a little bit about that, because the museum actually kind of plays a role in how you got involved in Masters of the Air.
Yeah, it does. We have the Stockton Field Aviation Museum, and we're a 501c3 nonprofit, but it's all volunteer and little thing. Basically, it's kind of what you're seeing here, a small hangar with a lot of memorabilia. So we got a pretty extensive collection of World War II aviation equipment. So all the gear that the air crew and ground crew use. So we've got all the vehicles, and then training stuff to gun sites, bomb sites, radio, radar, navigation equipment, all different kinds of things. So we also like to bring it to life. And one of the things we do is called Bomber Camp. Back in college, I wrote a paper on doing a little business prospectus on fixing up an AT-11 and running a training camp to teach people how to drop bombs and shoot guns. And so we brought that to life with the Collings Foundation aircraft. So we would we use the B-17 and the B-24, and people would come in and we teach them about all the different crew positions in the plane, and then we go out, load bombs and load the guns up and actually go for a simulated mission. We go fly for about an hour in one of the bombers, and each of the students could come up and use a Norden bomb site and drop a concrete dummy bomb and try and hit the target. And then we had 50s going in the back, and you crawl all the way around. In fact, we even opened up the ball turrets so you could ride the ball turret in flight. So it's been a lot of fun. We just did our 13th year. Been flying recently with the Erickson aircraft collection with their B-17, the old pub, and I would love to do the same with CAF, planes too, if you guys would have us. But.
Excellent. Well, the bomber camp, I mean, what a great idea. I saw some of the pictures that were posted on Facebook, and just smiles ear to ear from everybody, from the people who were putting the camp on to the people who were participating. And how many years have you done that?
Yeah, this is our 13th year that we just completed a few weeks ago. It's been very popular. Everybody has a great time. Everybody says, "Oh yeah, best money ever spent," kind of thing, and it's all volunteer. We have this year we had, I think, 10 living history guys come up from the LA, a group of awesome folks down there, and then we have people from all over come in and help out. A guy coming from back east who's a bomb site expert, teaches our bomb site class, and it's a lot of fun, a lot of work, a lot of people coming to bust their backsides to help make it happen, and it's pretty cool. We set up a camp with all the vehicles around and all the equipment, and so it looks like a little revetment from World War II. So it's kind of a living history immersive environment, which is it's a lot of fun.
Good. Well, back to Masters of the Air. How did you get involved in the project?
Well, when I first heard of this Hank Spielberg project going, I wrote emails off to these guys, every email address I could find, saying, hey, I'd love to help, pick me. But, there was probably another 1,000 other guys doing the same exact thing. So I never heard anything about that. And then I got an email once from Michael Fawley saying, hey, are you interested in possibly helping out and in teaching the actors how to look like they can fly a B-17? I said, yeah, I'd be happy to. So I got a conference call with some of the heavy hitters, and I guess that was kind of a phone interview. And they decided to take me on board for 2 weeks. It was right in the middle of COVID, so I headed over there, did a quarantine thing in a hotel, and then went out and started teaching the actors to look like they could fly. This is all before all the filming started. And Captain Dale Dye, the senior military advisor, was running a boot camp, and then we were doing the aviation stuff. So I set up all the training material for bombardiers, navigators, gunners, and pilots and stuff. And then Dave Littleton had a really nice cockpit that he built in his garage for over 20 years, using like as many real parts as he could. And so we used that as a simulator, as well as the equipment that the production company had made. And it was just teaching the actors, and it worked out really well. So 2 weeks was just coming to an end, and I'm getting ready to go home, checked in with production on going home. They said, oh, well, no, we decided that you're going to stay. And I said, they said, didn't they tell you? He said, no, nobody told me. And actually, nobody even asked me. So of course, I, wanted to help out, and I ended up staying for the full production. So I was in England and the UK for 9 months. And thankfully, my daughter, who's my office manager, Sydney, and Ricky, the guy's been with me for a billion years, took care of the shop while I was gone. We had to bring in IAs, from outside sources to come and look over Ricky's work and make sure everything was okay to sign off stuff in my absence. But it was great. So it was, wonderful experience. And Sydney and Ricky knew that it was a once in a lifetime thing. So I appreciate their taking care of the ranch while I was off goofing around.
Yeah. With the production of the series itself, obviously there were not B-17s available to fly, and even if there were, the cost is prohibitive. So lots of use of CGI, which is unfortunately a reality that we need to deal with, because there's only a few flying B-17s, and they would be almost impossible to get them together and then to do what you need to do in a movie. But how did they, aside from the CGI, but we're looking at some footage or photos of B-17s, these look like pretty good mock-ups.
Yeah, there's a company called BGI in England, and they specialize in making props and stuff for the movie industry. And it's an amazing company. And what you're looking at there is one of the aircraft that they made. They made 2 full-size B-17s, and they're basically meant to look good on the outside and as you walk around the nose. And they really they were amazingly accurate. And so they made 2 of those. One of them had motors on the wheels and could actually drive around. So they take the props off and then CG in propellers as it's running around. And so there are 2 of these full-size aircraft. And then they had in the studios, they had fuselages, like complete fuselages, several of them. One for the visual effect, and then one that was the whole nose section from the bomb bay forward up on a gimbal that was surrounded by what they call the volume. So it's a TV screen with high-res images, so the actors have something to look at and to react to. So if you're sitting in the cockpit of this nose section and you look out the wing or out your window, you can see a wing and engines right there out to your left. You can see the flak, the fighters coming in. You look down, they had flown over the routes of the missions and scanned the ground. So there's the ground, it's real. One of the guys on set said, hey, I was stationed at the barracks there at Bremen, and he's pointing out to his barracks. But yeah, it's pretty good to see the flak and the fighters and all that kind of stuff. So for the guys to react to, and that was a big thing that we had to do with the actors is, the pilot who's flying, his hands on the controls and hands on the throttles, and he's looking, which way does he look to the aircraft that he's forming on, and how does he react and react to battle damage or shutting an engine down, all that kind of stuff. So we had to cover a lot of different things, and we did it generically to begin with, and then we would start working with them on all the specific scenes. Hey, we're going to lose engine number 2. This is what you do, and all that kind of stuff, or crosswind landings, all that. So that was a lot of different things to do.
Okay. So from my understanding, so you went through here's how you start an engine, here's how you climb, descend, whatever, the generics, but then for the individual scenes that would have specific actions, you basically had to choreograph it for the actors.
Yeah, we sure did, and we had to come up with the actions that would fit the scene and try and make it as accurate as possible. So yeah, starting engines and then and takeoff procedures and that kind of stuff also varied through World War II, and it's some of it's different than what we do nowadays because they were also brand new and going through learning curves. Like for instance, early on, all these aircraft did 3-point takeoffs, found a 3-point attitude just above stall. And then they would, accelerate and climb out. And, that's something that we don't really do today because, there's not a big safety margin there. in the speed at which you're getting off the ground just above stall and your safe single engine speeds. So, but that's the way they did it. And then that transition through World War II, where they would let the tail come up and then come off in a 2-point attitude. So that changed, and we changed that as well through the production. The procedures, we have the original checklist. In fact, in the photo that's here below, you can see the checklist in his hand that was reproduced, and it's the exact checklist that we used, and the procedures we use right out of the manuals. They started engines 1 through 4 in sequence. Not something we do nowadays when we're bombers, but yeah. So we tried to keep it as authentic as possible, and all the emergency procedures. Yeah, when you lost an engine, what you did, and teaching them how to use their rudders, because you may never see their feet moving, but maybe you'll see their knees. So there's a lot of that stuff that we did, a lot of detail that we put into it, and some of it, made the final cut, and a lot of it, hit the cutting room floor, so to speak.
How much research did you have to do to make sure that those procedures were authentic? Is it something that you obviously are a student of history? You had a knowledge of that, or did you have to then really go in and focus in on the time frames?
Yeah, so I went in with a basic knowledge of either aircraft and systems and flying and formation work and how that stuff worked. But yeah, I had to get into the books and the manuals and the research and the files too, for the mission files. So again, I was in the middle of COVID, so the big museums and research centers were shut down. So all the stuff in the U.S. was shut down, and they had copies of the mission reports, which were really pretty detailed, but they were multi-generation copies and weren't very good. Thankfully, during this process, the National Archives in England opened up, and I got in there like on the first day and spent most weekends, or a bunch of weekends there, going into their files. And in those files, I learned a lot of stuff. I didn't realize that the British had a full contingent there at each of the Army Air Force airfields. They built the field. They were RAF fields. They were turned over to the Army Air Forces, but they still maintained a presence there, and they did reports. So they would do mission reports and send that stuff in. And there in the archives are the original reports with the original teletype, from the mission order to, what was ordered and what was actually flown, and the debrief. And then, one of them for Trondheim, there were handwritten reports in there that were sent back from the people on the ground that were kind of acting as spies. Hey, you hit this building, that one's, destroyed, this one you missed, or you hit, this house over here, that kind of stuff. Amazing information. And then the photos that were all original. On the back, Air Ministry, marks on the back of the paper. It's just incredible to be able to see that stuff. So, it was great to go and learn, get that information and incorporate a lot of that into it, and then bring some of the authenticity into it too. It's like, look here in the mission report, they did this, and Carrie, the director of the first 4 episodes, was really interested in making it authentic and putting in details like that. So it was wonderful to be able to do that. But yeah, a lot of research. I'm just a small part of that. There's this gal, Jessica, called her the brain. This young kid, and the stuff that she, had researched and had in her mind was just astounding. The whole staff was just incredible. Everybody wanted to make it as authentic as possible. And of course, some of those details kind of got lost towards the end. Some things, like in post-production CG stuff, I wish I could have been involved in some of that to help out. But it was darn impressive. Every department wanted to make it authentic, and I was working with all the departments. They kept coming to me, so just training the actors turned out to be kind of a small part of what I did.
Sure.
But it was sure fun. So I had basic knowledge coming in, but was able to expand my knowledge by doing research there on site too.
Amazing. Well, this is one of the camera, I guess, rigs that was used. Is this one actually moves as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It shakes and moves around a bit. Does pitch and roll kind of stuff. It's sort of limited. That big grid you see, that's called the volume, and those are high resolution monitors all around in the back, turned off at the moment. But you'll see, I think some other pictures may show that. But that's where the actors could, have the fighters coming by, and they could see stuff to be able to react to it. So on the waist section of the airplane, you see all sorts of gear on the outside, and that's from the special effects folks. They have devices that will poke holes in the aircraft. So when you see, let's say, the waist gunners, and all of a sudden there's flak holes and light coming through, that's the kind of thing that they would be filming there. But yeah, the whole airplane, that whole rig would shake and move. So all the actors are, shaking and moving it in reaction to that. And that's a nose section that was used. That nose section went up in what's called the volume. So it's on a big gimbal to pitch and roll and yaw and rotate around in a high resolution, completely almost surrounded the whole thing and over the ceiling that had all of the full motion for the actors. So the bombardiers, navigators, top turret gunner, pilot, co-pilot, and they had cameras all over the place too. And that's one of the whole fuselages. And you can see that these are meant to be, have filming on the inside. So all of these flanges you see are areas that you could unbolt and take the side off to put camera angles in there.
Okay.
The BGI did a heck of a job designing these things, but yeah, you can see all those fasteners. And you can take the whole side off. And actually, it was rarely used that way. They hardly ever did that. Only a few times.
Really?
Most cameras were on the inside. But
Okay.
yeah, that whole motion thing too. And this is during one of the tests. They had these sort of like airbags on the bottom that would pump air into it, and it would act like a hovercraft. So two guys could grab that whole, I don't know how much it'd weigh, grab that whole thing and move it around on the hangar or on the studio floor as needed. But it's some pretty impressive technology that they use.
Yeah. Here's one where you can see the screen better.
Yeah, so that's what they call the volume, and there is that whole surround video wall, basically, that you can react to. And I think originally it was planned so that all the final scenes would be high resolution and would be shot like that, but they didn't quite get there, so they had lower resolution images that the guys could react to, and then they put in the CG stuff later. But as you can see, that's from the bomb bay all the way forward, that they have the crew in there, and they would have cameras on each of the crew as they're doing their mission, or sometimes just the bombardier. They'd also have special effects up there too. But you can see that on the orange things on the bottom, or it's like a flight simulator, literally. Yeah. But this thing would pitch and roll like you wouldn't believe. Darn impressive.
Yeah.
Great setup.
And of course, it wouldn't be a movie without a crane.
Yeah, really. So they had that note section on this truck that they, I think it was BGI special built that rig. It's a big generator and hydraulic unit on the box on the back to counterbalance this whole thing. And this device would go down the runway at speed, and the camera's next to it, and then it would pitch like it's taking off or coming in to land like that. Yeah. And then I think they even had sequences where they were coming in low towards the grass for the belly land scenes and ditching scenes and stuff like that. But yeah, you can see an actor in the cockpit. Yeah. And there's
your
50
your
caliber
armament
guns
on the side here.
Yeah, a bunch of the 50 cal guns, and we have in the museum, we have a collection of a lot of that original equipment. And some of that stuff, those gun mounts are hard to find, and they're really expensive. And so they needed a whole bunch. And when I walked in early on, they had reproduced those gun mounts. And I mean, they were good enough because they originally were planning on using blank firing full auto 50s. So these things were functional. They recoil and absorb the impact of the gun, so it doesn't damage the airframe. And they were stunning, absolutely beautiful. All the stuff that they made you couldn't tell it from the real thing. Dave Littleton brought in some of his original equipment that they would reproduce, and then they have samples or sometimes blueprints. They built the airplanes, using blueprints and stuff. So they were, they are a one-to-one scale aircraft. And then all the equipment inside, the things that we take for granted, like we have portable oxygen bottle or a walk-around bottle or heated suit boxes, all that kind of stuff, radio equipment here, originals. But they made all that from scratch, and a lot of it you really can't tell that it's homemade. They did such an amazing job. BGI is an incredible company. Yeah, that's so you would raise one of the aircraft up, and they had crew in there too. And there was a sequence where they would open the bomb doors and then drop bombs from it. But they had all sorts of interesting things were done. I went up to the crane operator actually not long after this picture was taken, and asked him, how much does this thing weigh? And it weighs exactly the same amount as a B-17. I mean, the whole structure is all steel inside and everything else, and it weighs as much as a real airplane.
Amazing.
Yeah, there's the volume that we saw earlier with the no section in it. This is early on when they were just assembling it and testing it. So this is kind of when I came in, they were still building this thing. It's pre-production, and it's pretty darn impressive. And then they had that other one that would surround the fuselage as well. But, yeah, and it's the future, I guess, from what I understand, the future of filming. And they're doing some of this stuff on, I think, the Star Wars episodes where they have the final resolution, high resolution, final pixel, I think they call it, to images that the actors are there to react to it, and then it's done. They film that, the backdrop is all there, and it's done. There is no real post-production. Interesting stuff. So yeah, the future. Yeah, there's the control console basically for all that. You can see a B-17 fuselage in the upper left. And this is the brains of the outfit. I mean, you should have seen the banks of computers, and then all the cooling and everything required for that. And then that stuff was all pumped into all the images. And then there's little track balls all over the aircraft and sometimes the actors. And so when things would move, then they could keep all this in real time. And on the screens, you can see there's a wing in the engines, like I was talking about. So it's kind of odd looking here, but when you're sitting in the cockpit and you look out the window. The left side, you'll see engines 1 and 2. They're running. It's just, it's pretty cool. And then of course, the fighters and the flak and everything else that they would introduce. So one of the things that we were doing too is that I was helping with graphics, and we were plotting all the missions. So my dad was an navigator in World War II, and I used a lot of his equipment too, and forms and things. And the graphics department came up with forms and the charts, and then I would actually mark from the original reports. There was what was briefed, and then what was actually flown. And so we would plot both of those on the paper charts, just like they had. So for the navigators to use, but also for the computer guys, because where they're going to be flying and where they're going to be turning. So making, let's say, going up to Trondheim mission, flying up over the North Sea, and then making right-hand turns as they go through the target, and the initial point to the target, from the target to the rally point, how they flew back out, away from the flak to get back home. So all that stuff was put in and was accurate. So they were making turns just like they did, for the most part. That kind of accuracy and detail. And then they would have the sun. You can sort of see the sun back there too, because the plane's turning. That sun, that big spot on the screen would move, and then shadows would move in the airplane. It's really cool.
Yeah. That's why they call it magic.
Yeah, it is. Steven Rosenbaum, he's the head of VFX for this program, and what a great guy. He took me under his wing and helped me out a lot, because I'm an airplane guy, a Warbird guy, not a movie guy, and as a result, I was ruffling some feathers, for trying to bring my authenticity in. Yeah, I ruffled a few feathers, and Steven said, yeah, the movie folks, each of them are very protective of their lane in the pool. And here I am not knowing any better, and I'm doing cannonballs in the deep end. Sorry I pissed you off, but it's really cool that so much stuff that I brought in made it to the final cut. So I feel like that I did contribute a lot, and it was an honor to do that, and very rewarding to see it in the final episodes.
Well, and that's some of the when you read the praise for the series, there's always criticism, and some of it is that there are some Hollywood liberties that are taken with the story. But how did you feel being a part of it? As you just said, you're coming from the authenticity side, and the production writers, whatever, are coming more from a Hollywood side, and what does the audience want? How do you feel that, in your opinion, that balance was maintained?
Well, like for instance, Carrie, the director of the first 4 episodes, well, they changed directors, and originally it was like each director had 2 episodes, and Carrie negotiated to get 4. And he was a living history guy himself, and he's really interested in the authenticity and detail. And yet, as he says, we don't want to put the audience to sleep. So of course you can't go in there like, oh, there's 9 rivets here, there should have been 7, or something like that. That stuff doesn't matter, and you don't want to slow down production. But Carrie also wants it to be entertaining. So yeah, there were liberties taken, and I understand that kind of stuff. Some of it I felt like I had a part in making it a little more authentic. Steven Rosenbaum in one of his podcast interviews was talking about how they have an engine fire. One of the things I was concerned about that Hollywood always does is they have coming out of the front of the engine, like you see on the radial engine, you have fire coming out of the front of the cowling, and it's all over the place, and it didn't do that. So they had fire where there was fuel in it, and that was usually the accessory section back. So I wrote an email and had lots of pictures of it and examples of engine fires and how they were. And sometimes those fires would go all the way back and burn the fabric off the tail, but they typically weren't pushing out of the front in 200 miles an hour wind out the front of the cowling. So there was that kind of stuff. And he said in that podcast, it's like, we understand, but we have to make it thrilling, because of course most of the people watching this aren't Warbird folks. They're not really airplane folks. So there's a happy medium in there somewhere. The frustrating stuff for me would be where, like in post-production, a lot of that happened. Things like, hey, these props are turning backwards, or hey, the blade angles on these props are backwards, which is actually on the engine behind me. I think 2 of the blades are backwards on this, the way it came to our museum. So trying to fix that kind of stuff. And then just helping out to make some things more authentic. But they got to take liberties. There's got to be some entertainment value in there. But they tried really hard to keep it as authentic as possible. So some of the storylines, like there's stories about the mechanics or how a Biddick died, that kind of stuff, that it's not quite accurate. But the family is actually out there too, and they were watching this, and they're very happy the way their family members were portrayed. So that's the important thing to me, to see that. And then this picture here was taken as a sequence at the airfield to make it look like it was in North Africa, and the planes all shot up. And I took that shot, and it's like, it's hard to tell that that's not a real wartime shot in color, but it's just stunning to see some of this stuff come to life. These kids, the great young kids, in amazing costumes and accurate outfits, like that, just look so bloody real to see this stuff come to life. It's wonderful. So what I tell people, it's like, look, for every one thing you want to complain about, or about, you tell me 5 or 10 things that you've not seen in any other show since World War II. Because there's so many good details in there. And yes, there are mistakes. Yes, there's problems. But overwhelmingly, it was, so much more detail and authenticity, and people learned from the horrors that these guys had to go through back in the day.
And I think that's an important point. Something that I said when people start saying, well, there's only 7 rivets here and there should be 9, and I watched an in-depth YouTube video on someone saying that the number of bombs coming out of the bomb bay was too many, or they're too fast, and all these little nitpicky things. And I understand it, because you want to have history be correct, but at the same time, knowing that this is an entertainment, infotainment kind of production, just being able to tell the story. And if viewers who don't know World War II history like we do, if it causes them to pick up a book or do more research or find out about the Bloody 100th and the stories, the actual stories of the men who were there, then I think, if there's some liberties taken, I think the compromise there is good, because if it drives someone to learn more about the topic.
I think so too. Yeah. Exactly. That's exactly what's happened. I mean, I've seen online where there's so many people, that watch this and then, want to learn more about what their relatives did. And some folks even in the 100th Bomb Group. So now they can, they're visiting like crazy the Thorpe Abbotts, the original airfield in the museum for the 100th Bomb Group. And it's wonderful. Yeah, it's raising awareness, just like saving our, Band of Brothers did. Same sort of thing. And that's wonderful. It raises the awareness and makes people look into it and see. But it also, shows that, hey, this flying thing is not like Hollywood, where it's all glamour and the white scarf flowing in the wind and gets the girls and all that kind of stuff. Early on, the loss rate was horrendous, and some of the aspects that they brought up, it's like, how would you just went through the horrors of combat, seeing your close friends die, seeing a plane next to you go down or blow up with 10 people in it, gone, coming back into your barracks and all the empty bunks. And how did you, get through that mentally and get in that airplane the next day and go and do it again, over and over again, pretty much knowing that, your ticket was up sometime soon. So that's one of the really cool things that they portrayed in there, which is really important that you just don't see in their shows. So the human aspect and because back then, there wasn't PTSD. They hadn't figured that out, but they were starting to figure it out. They had flak farms, where guys, they'd send them off to go and relax because of all the things they'd seen to try and the doctors were just now recognizing this shell shock is one of the early terms they came up with, and how to deal with that so that the guys don't go over the edge. But there's a lot of that personal stuff shown in this series, which is really good. And it was a hell of a job that these guys did, and the air crew looking down at the ground pounders going, oh, no way in hell I'd ever do that. And the ground pounders looking at, up at the airplane, no way in hell I'd ever do that. But it was miserable for everybody. I mean, and they showed a lot of the horrors of war, and which is a huge part of this that often gets missed. So yeah, that's part of the stuff that I love about this series.
So you were over there for almost 10 months involved in the production. You might have signed an NDA, I don't know, but are there any good stories you can share?
I think I have been sharing oversharing like crazy on this stuff, but yeah, it was really neat to work with the young actors, and most of them were wonderful, really wanted to learn as much as possible and make it as accurate as possible. Crosby here, the navigator, one of the main characters, who was actually there from start to finish. He was with the original crew that came over from the States and was one of the last to leave, and he became the lead navigator. And it's just, the actor that portrayed him, he was just a wonderful, wonderful kid and wanted to learn. And I mean, being airsick, the guy was actually airsick, for real. And they were showing that in the series and all of the personal issues that people had. It really brings all that stuff to life. And reading these guys' books and learning what they went through, and they portrayed some of that so beautifully. John Orloff, the writer who wrote the whole screenplay, did an amazing job with Miller's book of the same title, Masters of the Air. When Miller came out, he visited the set. He was just amazed to see all this stuff, come to life as well. But what was kind of cool, because this was a 9-to-5 job, so weekends were off, and I would head off. One of the actors was a metal detector guy, and so we'd go up to Thorpe Abbott's and we'd go through, the areas around the hard stands. So the concrete hard stands are gone, but right around the edges where they used to be is where all sorts of stuff was just tossed out of the airplane. So this guy was so good with his metal detector. He'd hear a sound and say, "Oh, that's a 50 caliber bullet." 6 or 8 inches down, we dig it out, and sure enough, here's a round dated 1943. Or that darn well that round probably flew over Fortress Europe, and then it came back and was tossed out of a window or something like that. They cleaned out the airplane. We found so many stuff. He pulled out an oil door for servicing off an engine nacelle, painted OD green with a decal still on there that he accidentally wiped off with his finger. But that stuff is out there. We would go spend weekends just going through the forest and seeing a lot of the old stuff still around. It was really fun. And then meeting the living history guys, going off on the weekends to the air shows and things in England. So it was really neat. These folks that are portraying Army Air Force living history folks that just did incredible work and helping to spread the word as well about what these guys went through. But yeah, the picture you're showing here is actually, they had a cockpit or a radio room section for a ditching scene, and that they ended up not making it in the movie. But they even had that section in a big tank of water and was submerging it, bringing it down in the water, so the water's coming up as these guys are trying to get out. All sorts of good scenes that were filmed that didn't make the final cut.
Yeah, you mentioned the authenticity that they put into it, and when you look at it, I mean, you're just looking at this particular shot. all the components are there. I mean, you've got the machine gun mount up here, which you don't normally see, you know, and all the, you know, the radios, everything looks the way it should. So I'm sure there's probably,
like we had the chestback parachute stowed on top of that BC-348, his liaison receiver, because we got wartime pictures that showed that that's where it was stashed. But in the ditching, he took that parachute down and put it in front of his radio, so he wouldn't, you know, he'd rest against it. So when this thing decelerates like crazy, he had some padding to protect his face, that kind of stuff. And then having everybody, you know, there's actually really good training film on how to ditch the B-17 and where everybody goes. And it's like, okay, so the radio operator will be number 2 position on the right-hand side and all that. You know, it's like in reality, of course, everybody piles in the radio room. There's no sequence to it. And then the film goes on to say this person will be the first person out and they will receive the Gibson Girl radio, you know, all that kind of stuff. So we started with that as a foundation, but you could see all the guys tucked in because, man, when that thing decelerates in a ditching, or it gets bounced around like crazy in a belly landing, these guys are getting, you know, beat up pretty good. But they all would gather in the radio room and then half is on. That's how they would get out. So, yeah, we filmed that as accurately as possible. But, yeah, the clothing is incredible. Several companies, Eastman Leather, that made the jackets and other companies that made all this stuff, down to the May West. And for instance, this guy, Allman, who is one of the lead guys for costumes, you know, the May West. So he had original, as the scene or the movie progressed through time, they had the basic May West, and then he would put the MW, modification work order stencils on it, adding a strap or this or that, and that stuff would change as the clothing did or the oxygen mask did throughout the series. So starting with, and they had like real A9 oxygen masks, which are really rare, but there were scads of them, you know, and they're fixing them and setting them up and just, you know, keeping them in place and all the straps in place was quite the job itself. You're always watching the monitors. Oh shoot, you know, this is not right. Got to fix that. There was a lot of that stuff as well. But yeah, all the equipment. And then teaching the guys, radio operators, how to you know, tune the equipment, what they would do, and then get their logs, filling out their logs and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it was just so much fun to see this stuff come to life. It's a ball turret that they made from scratch. But yeah, I mean, it was moved by people by hand up above, but neat stuff to see.
Yeah.
This is teaching the guys just how to get into B-17. And this is kind of cheating because this is a fuselage kind of sitting on the ground. It's not up at the right angle and all that, but teaching the actors. And there was a big competition going, how to grab on. And this is kind of poor example right here. But I got some really good videos. These guys getting in and swinging. And one guy took 6 seconds to go from the ground up into the pilot seat. And that was a record. Yeah. He won the day.
Yeah, I'd say.
Yeah, it's pretty good. And these guys were great. They were the nicest kids and very, very interested and eager. So they were a joy to work with. They really were. Yeah, we actually had snow out on set one day and covered everything. And it was the winter of '44. I think that was a really bad winter all through England and Europe. The whole Battle of the Bulge stuff, I mean, it was nasty, and it was really kind of neat to see snow here at the Abingdon Airfield. It's an airfield, an RAF airfield. I think it predates World War II, but that was used for a lot of the filming scenes where the B-17 fuselage or the whole airplanes were. And that's a great scene. These are the tents that the crew chiefs and all the workers lived in. And they lived near their airplanes. And they had those little red fuel barrels that they would, you know, bring fuel in or oil in for their stoves and wood and whatever they could use to try and keep warm. But imagine the conditions that these guys had to work in. And the mission order would come in sometimes 10 o'clock at night, sometimes 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning for an engine or for a mission at 7 o'clock. You know, engines start 7 o'clock. So holy cow. I mean, the planes had to be prepped and engines run, all that kind of stuff, service with fuel, with oil, all the bombs had to be, you know, the mission order had the bomb load and the specific fusing and the intervalometer settings, and then the bomb site techs had to bring the bomb sites in and get all that stuff set and checked and everything else. It's just incredible what these guys did. And then the planes would go, and then, you know, they would see them off, and then they go and crash and then sweat out the mission, waiting for their plane, their crew to come back. And a lot of times they didn't come back. So the ground crews, which are well portrayed in this series too, which you never hear about that stuff. And that's one of the wonderful things. Ken Lemons is the guy who was a regular crew chief that became, the lead crew chief. And, there's a great story about him, fixing the whole story about him fixing a magneto, while the aircraft is taxiing out with all the other aircraft getting ready to take off. It really happened. And it's portrayed a little bit. I mean, originally he was adjusting points on the magneto, and then he got out and they actually started and did a full run-up power check on it. It was fine, great. And then it continued in line as they're going, and then they took off and they made it on the mission. In the series, it's like they're on the runway, they started off and boom, off they go. So that's a little bit of variation for Hollywood, but it tells a story of what Ken did. That's incredible. And a lot of people are like, oh no, that couldn't happen, but it did. What's so cool about a lot of the details in this show. And yeah, the details here. If you walk up to one of those clipboards or one of those inboxes and you start thumbing through to the bottom of that stack of papers, it's all 100th Bomb Group, authentic information or correspondence. It's not something fake. So you could take a camera up and start rifling through any of that stuff, and it's all there. And if you see the original images of what these offices look like, it's just like it. It's incredible. There's a guy he's just the leading historian about airfields, and he came into the set. It's like, he was just blown away by how good it looked, with all of his authenticity, detail, and research. I mean, that's a great shot there, the equipment room. So these blue bunny suits, that's the electric flying suit that they used early on, and they had a lot of troubles with that, but they're really rare nowadays. I mean, we got a couple in our collection here, but they're super rare. And then to walk in and to see a whole wall full of these things, like, and you go up and you look at them, and they're reproduced down to the stitch. I mean, even the label in the back and the little chain that goes across in the back, it's all there, and it's incredible. So a company in Belgium made these, and thankfully a couple of them were available afterwards, and I bought a reproduction one. But yeah, there's a good shot of costume, just one section of the costume department, with all the gear for each of the pilots. Great stuff. Yeah. Incredible costumes that are just amazing.
So with the series out, I know you've been talking to many people in different interviews and things. What now that the spotlight, I don't want to say the spotlight's dimming, but the hype for the series is kind of over. It's dwindling off as people are watching it. New people will rediscover it. What's next for Taigh? Are you going to stay in the movie business?
Oh no, like I said, I'm an airplane guy. So I came from our shop here. Our shop, we do flight instruction, rides, maintenance, restoration, part sales, all sorts of stuff. And we've done some movies and things over the years. We did a Nicolas Cage movie with USS Indianapolis, Man of Courage.
Okay.
Really good flying scenes, I can say that. But our harpoon is in there flying, doing all sorts of fun stuff, and other little things, some TV shows and stuff. Nothing at all like this. I mean, I think I've heard people saying that this may have been the biggest TV production, budgeted TV production show in existence. I doesn't surprise me. I mean, there was like somewhere between 1,000 to 1,500 people working on this thing on a daily basis. It's like, the money is just staggering. So, I'm an airplane guy. I was real happy to help. I know that I could do this kind of stuff in the future. I would also, I know that if I got involved earlier, that I could save them a lot of money in production too, because there's a lot of things that they were doing that were, like I use an example as a spin sequence. They had this thing set up where one of the B-17s goes off into a spin to the left and starts coming down. And they built this big rig, rotisserie rig, to take the fuselage in and roll 360 degrees. So and I was looking at that going, well, what's that for? And they say, oh, it's for the spin sequence. Oh, hold on. Do you guys think that when a B-17 is in a spin, that the crew inside and all the stuff that's in there is kind of like bounces, rolls like a socks in a tumble dryer kind of thing? Is that what you think? So yeah, exactly. So, well, no, it didn't happen that way, And things like, but in a B-17, if it goes off on spin to the left, then forward of the center of gravity, people are pinned to the right side of the airplane. After the center of gravity, they're pinned to the left side of the airplane. Little details like that is like, I never thought about that, but yeah, that's how. And so, And then one scene who came in working on a Saturday, they had the whole nose section set up to hang vertically, and the flak had hit the nose and killed the bombardier and navigator. And in this sequence, the bombardier navigator, while the plane is like in a spin going down, they were going to have him fall out of the nose of the airplane, from gravity. It's like, no, it doesn't work that way. They were going to have the pilot kind of hanging by his feet, But anyway, so that's some stuff we were able to fix, and yet we were rehearsing this to shoot it on Monday, and I ended up talking to Steven Rosenbaum about that. I said, they're doing the sequence about falling out of the nose. I said, oh, no, I canceled that a while ago. I said, well, we're rehearsing it today to shoot on Monday. I said, oh, yeah, I'll take care of that. So I feel like if I got involved earlier on in the production, I could have saved them a lot of money of stuff they didn't have to build, or how they could do things to look authentic and not have to go to such lengths unnecessarily. So I really think I could have saved them a bunch of money. And in post-production, too, if I'd been involved in that, then I could have, saved some of the little mistakes here and there. But it's a great show. I don't want to put it down. But I came back, and I'm back at the shop. We're still doing, our maintenance and restoration and flight instruction and rides and Beech 18 stuff. And I do a lot of, training, helping people to buy their Beech 18 and teach them how to fly it and all that kind of stuff. Recurrency training and maintenance, and around the world. So that's my main thing. I'd love to do the movie stuff again. It's a lot of fun, and I know I could contribute a lot, but it's certainly not the main focus. So I'm a Warbird guy.
There you go. Speaking of not only a Warbird airplane enthusiast, but military vehicles as well, you are heading to Normandy for the 80th anniversary of D-Day.
Yeah, my girlfriend Jan and I are going over there. Jan bought a 1943 WC-51 weapons carrier truck. Looks like a small deuce and a half. It's got canvas in the back, and we're going to be, sleeping in air mattresses in the back of this World War II truck, because we're going to go from England down to North Weald, where all of the C-47s are arriving today, actually. Your airplanes are arriving today, I think, and we're going to camp out with those guys. There's the living history folks that I met when I was over there for production. Great guys. There's a big caravan of all their vehicles that are all Army Air Force related that are going to be doing the setting up camp around the C-47s at North Weald, and then we're going to drive down and get on the ferry, drive across, and go over to Cherbourg, where the C-47s are going to be doing their parachute drops and all sorts of things, and we'll be camping out with them. And so Jan and I are just excited. We're leaving on Sunday, and we're pretty excited to go and participate in that. Jan's sitting next to me, and she's giddy about that as well. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Indeed. Any final thoughts before we wrap up the show tonight?
Nothing I can think of. Just a shameless plug for Bomber Camp, bombercamp.org. If you guys want to come out and see what it's like, if for the guys in Master of the Year to actually fly in the plane and drop bombs and shoot guns and ride in a ball turret and all sorts of fun things, it's the only place you can do it. So for a shameless plug, anyway.
All right, nothing wrong with a shameless plug. What's the website again?
It's bombercamp.org. Or you can just Google search Bomber Camp, and there's tons of photos and videos and information. So yeah, come on out and fly in a really cool B-17, ride the ball turret, watch the bombs drop from the bomb bay or from the ball turret, and actually go in the nose and use an Norden bomb sight and drop off, see if you can hit the target. So it's a blast.
Awesome. Well, it sounds like something we should come back and revisit, along with your travelogue going to the 80th anniversary of D-Day.
Yeah, sounds good. We got all sorts of fun, interesting things coming up. We'd be happy to share that stuff with you.
All right. Well, thank you, Taigh. And thank you for joining us tonight. We'd love to hear your thoughts on tonight's episode or any ideas you have for a future topic. Feel free to drop us a line at media@cafhq.org. Remember, if you like tonight's show, please share it across your social media platforms. And if you are watching on YouTube, make sure you click that bell icon and you'll get notifications when our new episodes of Warbird Tube are posted. Until next time, I'm Steve Buss, wishing you blue skies and tailwinds. See you next time.